In the final game of the LEC 2022 Spring Split, G2 had an amazing read and understanding of building and adapting their team compositions in the series, and with a combination of ease of execution and a high level of play, set themselves up for success with an incredible lower bracket run. I wanted to break down different parts of the draft so we could understand where G2 capitalized on it, and how a few grave errors that Rogue makes along the way makes the game incredibly hard for them to play. Starting with the first game, let's break into the draft. So it starts things off here with an Aphelios B1, which is very standard since the ADC pool was choked so hard with things like the Caitlyn and Zeri bans. Alternatives here are still champions like Jinx, or they could have blinded a different role as well, as many other teams also approach. The main issue here is with the response in the R1, R2 with RE Jarvan. This shows that G2 is prepared to basically deal with the Aphelios opener. Rogue responds to this with Rumble Lucian, which is something I was not expecting at all. I'd say this info was definitely influenced by scrims based on how and when these picks were made, and G2 might know a thing or two about Rogue's strategy here. Lucian is a response pick into the RE, forcing Prio into a champion that usually cannot get it against most matchups, and then they end up blinding Rumble on the top side. This is most definitely a comfort pick for Odo and indicates that Rogue wants to secure this against any matchup that G2 can bring to the table. This pretty much indicates that if Rumble isn't picked now, they're going to lose it in the second phase and are willing to do this over picking jungle in this slot, which is okay, but hard to justify when you can just hide your cards and pick jungle here. MF is the response R3, and it's probably the best champion slot remaining, generates a great matchup into Aphelios, and works with the comp here. From here, G2 chokes out junglers that can prevent agency for G2's champs, whereas Rogue opt to remove tools that prevent G2 from scaling for free and causing issues for Rogue's early game agency. In R4, G2 picks Tryndamere, which is a great sideline matchup into the Rumble. Rogue then rounds out their comp with Leonas and Zao, which are picks that could have just been blinded anyway in an earlier slot, which makes me wonder what the value of their B2, B3 picks are. The point of this draft is to hedge your picks as much as possible and to have the agency to adapt in later stages, but especially in roles like jungle right now, it's very hard to justify that you gained very much from their B2, B3 picks instead. G2 rounds out this draft with a Rakan pick, which is great for ensuring consistency on multiple targets and possibly edges over another alternative pick like Nautilus, like being able to knock down Lucian as well as other carry targets that are really slippery. This draft is very much focused on Rogue being able to force plays with their priority and mid-prow into the RE, as well as investing resources into topside so that Rumble can influence fights over Tryndamere. This is supplemented by a winning jungle matchup as well, and G2's comp can overcome this by stabilizing early game and choosing their timers with the winning topside and simply preventing Rogue from getting a massive lead. Because of this and the ease of execution and the fumble from Rogue's B2, B3, I would rate draft 60-40 for G2. Moving on to game 2, Rogue banned Aphelios and actually opened Volibear this time, which is a decent all-rounder jungler at the moment. G2 respond to this with Xayah Jarvan. Xayah is a pretty strong all-rounder ADC for her ability to slot into most team comps right now, and is a good stabilizing lane thanks to the poke build. Jarvan is decently blindable as well because G2 is confident that Rogue will pick an immobile AD carry at this point, which Jarvan excels at being able to lock down. Rogue responds with Jinx's ear, and I think from this point already throws away the draft. Jinx is okay in a vacuum, but you are essentially playing into the conditions of Jarvan at this point. Although I don't think it's that bad, what makes the draft really easy to read for G2 here is the B3 Azir. This is a pick that essentially locks down Rogue's comp into a front to back and basically reveals their comp's identity to G2. It's possible that Rogue wants to hold their support pick for counter here, but there is nothing to gain by showing that pick this early. G2's response in the Corki indicates this by creating a confirmed poked win condition for the draft. This essentially puts Rogue scaling champs on a timer because the moment that Xayah and Corki can get going, Rogue is actually forced to play for dive or else these team fights are unplayable for them. There is no way they can hold objective space against Corki Xayah, which means that Azir Jinx has to play really aggressive. Combine that into a comp that can easily counter this win condition by picking defensive in R4, R5, draft is relatively easy for G2 at this point. At R4, G2 picked the Ornn, which is one of the strongest blind pick weak side champions right now, and creates that defensive capability for G2's comp. Rogue attempt to counter with Gwen, which is actually a great matchup for her, as well as a Nautilus B5. Again, Rogue failed to gain any ground with such a late support pick and don't have enough areas to play around the map through in order to generate a lead. G2 locked the nail in the coffin here with a Renata R5 pick, which counters the main way that Rogue can win this game. Playing into a scaling comp that gets outscaled, and with your only way to win having Gwen be obnoxiously fed and 1v9 the game, it's just incredibly easy for G2 to play this out. I give this draft 80-20 for G2. Now on to game 3. G2 is on blue side for the first time this series, and they open with an Ahri, which is pretty standard and strong in most situations and has been working well for G2 throughout the series. Rogue respond with the Jarvan Jinx combo, which is a pretty strong opening 2 picks. G2 go with a bit of a different approach here, countering with Trundle here for the Jarvan matchup, and then locking Xayah, of course. To go for a different pacing here, Rogue actually locked an R3 Twist of Fate, probably hoping to just change the pace of the game and try something different. The second phase bans come out, with a heavy focus on choking the top lane pools. This results in an R4 Jace pick from Rogue, meaning it can match the poke of the Xayah before it starts fights off. G2 attempt to neutralize it again with the Ornn, which again has been a great all-rounder weak side pick for G2. This gives a lot of agency for Odoamne here this game. They follow this with a Pyke pick, which makes me think it's a little bit of an ego pick by G2. There is some merit to this pick though, because the way G2 wins the game is by causing chaos around the map and selecting timers that can mess around with Rogue's Sign Blade, Focus, Win Con. Pyke is excellent at this because of his insane roam speed and his ability to have high kill pressure in these situations. Rogue round out their comp with an actual strong support counter pick here in the Braum, which sort of prevents the now revealed forward comp that G2 is going for. Out of all the drafts so far, I'd say this is the best one for Rogue, as they can stabilize the other lanes while playing for topside and have playable fights in later stages. Although it's pretty strong in terms of win conditions, Rogue still has less pressures and skirmishes, especially around mid-jungle. I'd rate this draft 55-45 in favor of G2. Rogue wins by really allowing Jace to thrive here though, so it's super important that he gets the right resources for it. So that's pretty much my analysis of why G2 had a really great process for basically understanding how Rogue drafts and just building the right comps to fully counter this and just make the game as easy as possible for them. Hopefully this was insightful to you all, and I will see you in the next one. Stay fresh.